Episode 203 of Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, Mark Novak. The diamonds are under your nose.
Yes.
What are we referring to, Mark? Tell us.
We get asked by good clients all the time that live locally about buying out of the area. And when I'm saying out of the area, 45 minutes away, 1.5 hours away, 24 hours away, plane flight away, they say, what do you reckon?
And we say, buy under your nose in the market that you know the best. Buy under your nose where you've lived, you've got the relationships with local agents. Buy where you're familiar with, because people, I think, Mark, people take for granted the knowledge they know even without knowing it. Like you see people.
I reckon that's the biggest one. You nailed it, actually.
Yeah, done. Show over. Thanks so much for
Show
watching.
over. See you, everyone. Have a great day.
Because we all have it where a client will, like a family, they're a barbecue, the house down the road sells, and like, wow, that was a great price, or wow, that was cheap. They're not basing that on any specific knowledge, but they've just got this sort of sixth sense of market knowledge of what price sounds right and what doesn't.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
You can't take that for granted when you're looking for a property, especially if you haven't bought before. You've just got this sixth sense. And I think that's a big thing as well. What else, Mark? Why
a good example?
Sort of bought under your nose?
But, just to emphasize what you're saying, guys and girls, taking it for granted, you may think, well, what do we exactly mean by that? What we exactly mean by that is this is your biggest investment in your life for the most part of most people. It's your biggest financial investment in your life. Now, get this. How well do you want to, or how familiar do you want to be with that investment, the biggest investment in your life? Let me give you a stupid, small, but very good example. Your local supermarket. If you go through your local supermarket and you go shopping and you've never been there before, it will take you ages and you generally won't get everything that you want. So there's this familiarity. When you've been into a supermarket 100, 200, whatever times, you become very, very familiar and very efficient at what you're doing. Selecting the property in your area under your nose is much the same. It's the biggest asset you're going to buy. And there are thousands and thousands of tentacles. There are thousands of pieces of information, assets that you can use to help make good decision in buying, renting, renovating that property that you just will miss out on if it's out of the area. I'm telling you, you've got to buy under your nose.
Yeah, and I think there's another big one which goes with that sixth sense. There's markets within markets. Like I look at DY, our core suburb here on the Northern Beaches, and there's stigmas attached to here or there. There's little, can sometimes be for the exact same unit, worth $50,000 more being on that side of the street compared to the other side of the street. And this doesn't always mean because there's something blatant there, like the beach. It could just be there's a couple of blocks of housing commission. It could be that set of the shops. There could be there's a back street that bypasses 5 minutes of traffic, which you can only get to because there's a no right turn. There are markets within markets, and if you're looking from the outskirt, coming out from the area, you would look at that two better on, let's say, the inferior side, and say someone paid $750 for that, I'll pay $750 for that, but they're both guiding $700, and reality is that probably should have been more of a $700,000 unit, and you just don't know that, and it's very hard to learn that you've got so much going on in a transaction to buying. Markets aren't really hard to get,
and you know what?
People can't put it in words either.
Yeah, but how many times as an agent have you sold something in a bit of a
inferior,
less desirable location, and you've turned around to your sales colleagues and said, yeah, they're an out of area buyer?
Yeah, a lot.
Right?
A lot of the time.
It happens all the time, and it's like, why? And that out of area doesn't mean they're less educated than anyone else. They just don't have those, you know, what we're talking about, that familiarity or that market within a market, or that knowledge of the area. So when you are buying one of the biggest assets of your lifetime, and you are in an area that has proven a track record of performing well, most of the reasons I see people not buy in that area is affordability.
Yeah.
So they'll go, look, I'm going to buy in Melbourne because I can get something for under 400 grand. I'm going to buy in Queensland because I can get something under 300 grand. But those areas, often they're making mistakes in the purchase. The amount of times I get owners coming back and selling that asset 10 years later for the same price of what they've bought it as, always.
And you know what? I think people also need to change a bit of their mark. I think a lot of areas, if you're renting, I reckon you can afford a property within that area. It may not be the property that you want to live in, but most of the time you're going to afford a property in that area if you're already renting in that area. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're renting a townhouse and you need to move into a house. Yes, you would like to buy the house, but you can't afford the house. Now, instead of just buying a house somewhere else, why don't you just buy an apartment in that area that you know where the good areas are, and then you rent a house. But I don't want to live in an apartment. You know what I mean? So you need a house size because you got 2 kids, but you can't afford it yet. So instead of moving into another area or buying it somewhere else or buying a house somewhere else, buy where you know and what you can afford, and rent what you need. There's nothing wrong. There's a lot of arguments saying it's actually better not to own your home, stay more mobile, liquid, and have an investment, and have your properties as an investment. I know there's nothing wrong with owning your home. I know there's a big ethos on owning it rather than renting it. Some people would rather own one home than 10 investments and rent their home. So there are a lot of people who
could be a pathway. You could be on that path, but just in order to get on that path, you get in on a unit level, 1 or 2 bedroom unit, with that view of 3 to 5 to 7 years, getting that ultimate home that you're after.
Because you know what's scary, Mark? You have a deposit.
No, Michael, tell me.
Thanks for asking. So by buying in the same market that you may want to buy the house or eventually live in, you're sort of protected with the market. And what I mean by that is, if you buy a unit outside of the area and that area and where you want to buy the house, that area doesn't grow, has as much capital growth, that may only go up 5%, but the house where you want to buy goes up 15%, your gap and the affordability to buy that's even worse now, and you've owned a property. But if you buy a unit in the area you eventually want to buy the house, if the house market goes up 15%, more than likely the unit market goes up 15% in sync. So that means your money is growing equivalent to where you actually want to go. Because how many times, like what you said before, people are buying an asset out of the area and it's worth the same because they just didn't spot where's a good buy, and their affordability gap from what they could sell that to buy the house it's worse. It's worse.
I'd love to know what people out there actually think about the chat this morning, because this morning, guys, we're challenging the thought of when you're buying a investment property or a property to live in or a commercial property, do you buy something under your nose? And that's why I've got the picture of the diamond.
And you know, the biggest thing we haven't touched on yet, Mark, the biggest thing is the management side of things, knowing the local trades, knowing a great property manager. And we had a client who used to always say he would drive past his home. He'd drive past his properties and just see how things are being treated. If there's a lot of rubbish on the lawn, if there's, I don't know, a lot of clothes on the clothesline, maybe more than what it should be or what he thinks, because there could be more extra people living there. There's 4 cars in a 2-bedroom, like in a 1-bedroom apartment. There's little things by you just driving past because it's in your area that can really help with your investment, the quality of it.
Oh, there's thousands of things that you just don't think about. You've got, if you look at your network around you, you know what they say, They
No,
say when
tell
you
me.
they say when you die, the average number of people that turn up to your funeral is 72.
Mm.
I had someone, funeral director, tell me that when they print off those cards at the funeral, they get a reference, but on average, it's about 75 cards, that those 72 cards that they print out. That's your network or your sphere of influence. Make no mistake, your sphere of influence is 100 to 200 people when you're young and sociable and in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. That network of 100 or 200 people, you have your real estate agent, you have your plumber, you have your electrician, you have your uncle who knows everything about property, you have that massive embedded network around you that you are reduced to zero when you're
Yeah.
buying out of the area.
Yeah.
So your network, your friends and family cannot help you with your biggest asset that you have, because Buffett bought in Queensland or Melbourne.
Yeah, very good point. How many times do you hear people say, "My friend's a builder. He's a carpenter. He can fix that. He's a plumber." All of that goes out the window. And you would think with your largest investment that you could be doing, you want to have all the resources and friendships and ammunition up your sleeve with your local agent, your local friends who can do the works.
Out of
What else,
sight,
Mark?
out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind is a big one.
You know, when it's not, when you got that investment, you can drive past, kick it, paint the front fence, do whatever you want, but you can drive past. That's a big bloody thing. When it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
True. Anything else you want to add in this one? This could be a little quick one.
Quick one. Look, it's a quick one. It's a simple one, and it's a rule. It's a golden rule that's often broken by people. So, and the reason it's easy to break is it's so tempting seeing the cheaper properties in Queensland and thinking to yourself, you know, the barrier of entry is lower in some areas, and you think, yeah, you know what, the rent is higher, but the rent's higher because it's not a good suburb. It's not a good area. Do you know what I mean? But if the rent is higher because the value is lower, does that make sense?
It does.
So
it does.
people are
drawn
not
in by that.
People are drawn into Sydney for very basic, simple, and fundamental reasons.
You got to remember, property is a long game. It's a long game. Look at it over 30 years, not just next week's rent being a little bit more. There's a reason the rents are higher. As you said, they're worth a little bit less. They're less desirable. Capital growth is where cash flow helps you today. Capital growth will help you resist you when you retire. So play the long game. Property is the long game.
But you know what else? Why is Sydney higher in price than Melbourne? And why is Sydney higher in price than Queensland? You've got to look at the basic fundamentals of science.
Weather,
right?
everything.
So climatically, if you look at the weather in Queensland, it gets a bit hot. If you look at the weather in Melbourne, well, it gets a little cold. So
and hot and rainy, all in the same hour.
So one of the reasons, so what that does is for business, for industry, for families, for everything human, people are attracted climatically to Sydney more for simple reasons like that. Now, what comes with that is often better agriculture. What comes with that is waterways. If you look at our waterways of Sydney, they are the waterways. I studied geology, by the way. But
30
if you look
seconds.
for 2 years, 1 hour a week. But if you look at geographically, again, another thing that when you are climatically great, it actually creates, the geography tends to be a little bit better as well around. So waterways and stuff like that. Sydney Harbour compared to you know, Queensland and compared to Melbourne, beautiful. So that's all going to tie into, even health wise, you know, aging in the Northern Territory of Australia, where it's super hot, will be harder on the body than you know, than Sydney. Fact. So I think when you're talking property prices, guys, believe it or not, you've got to consider that these sort of things come into it. That is why when you stem off that, it all stems from that. That's why Sydney does a little bit better. So if you're from Sydney, buy in Sydney. If you're from Melbourne, buy in Melbourne for the reasons we spoke about. If you're from Queensland, buy in Queensland. Stick to the area that you actually know. It'll be much more powerful for you.
Yep, diamonds are under your nose. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this morning.
Here's the diamonds.
Serge, Rembrandt, Mr. Michael, Michelle, and it's good to have you on. Good thing, lucky Luke wasn't on. He may watch it later because he would have been a bit like, Queensland, God, Luke, we love Luke. He's a great buyer's agent, buying properties all around Australia for his clients.
Look, Luke's a salesperson, and so are we. There is a market for him to take people from Sydney to Queensland.
Very true.
And his job is to educate that market, and our job is to educate that market, and people have free will to make their decision. So, you know, we're certainly we're not discrediting people from Sydney buying in Queensland. If for certain reasons they need to, but we give people those reasons and people make those decisions. So it's interesting, hey?
It is. All righty, guys, we'll be back tomorrow morning, live 7:45 for more of Hot Goss for episode 204. Thank you for watching.
Giddy up. Have a great day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Say bye. Bye-bye.
Boy. Boy. Boy.
Boy.
Boy.